My aunt stole my fiancé for her daughter, but karma hit hard when I took the trust fund, and their lives fell apart. Clara, a 26-year-old woman, was engaged to Ron, a 28-year-old man, for a year. We met in college, were friends but not very close. We started dating after college and were together for 4 years. Last year, we got engaged and held a small ceremony with close family and friends. My aunt was also invited. Since attending my engagement, my aunt was impressed by my ex's charm. She couldn't stop praising how handsome and rich he was. It was unusual because she had never been that affectionate towards me. Her daughter, Sharon, 24, is extremely beautiful but dumb as a rock. My aunt always compared us in every aspect. I was good at academics, but even though she was 4 years younger than me in school, my aunt would compare our grades. She once went as far as comparing her 8th grade report card to my 12th grade report card and declared that Sharon was better than me. The joke is that Sharon couldn't even pass high school. Ron and I were planning our wedding in October because I had to visit the UK for a summer program. Everything was going well between us when I left in June. We talked once a day despite the time difference. 2 weeks into my program, we began to drift apart. When I asked Ron what was wrong, he didn't give me a clear answer and just said he was stressed about work. I thought the distance was affecting our relationship, but I didn't take it seriously because this wasn't a new relationship. I planned to resolve things when I returned. A week before my program ended, he stopped talking to me entirely. I felt childish wanting to resolve things while he chose the easy way out and disappeared. I've always had a lot of pride, and though it hurt, I don't chase anyone. I kept living in my delusion that he'd come back to me. He didn't. Instead, my aunt showed up at my house with a wedding invitation. I found out that Ron was going to marry my cousin, Sharon. What the hell? In the era of emails, she showed up with a printed copy of the invitation. She wanted to see my disappointment in person. It was one of the few moments in my life when I felt completely bewildered. I was in shock, wondering how he could fall in love with my cousin, who can barely pay for her meals. But my aunt soon gave me the answer. She said, "I'm so sorry, dear. I understand your pain, but what can we do when people fall out of love? Maybe he couldn't handle the distance. Don't be mad at your cousin." Ron was the one who sought out Sharon for coffee because he had nothing else to do after work. You know how beautiful my princess is. You can't blame Ron for falling for her. I looked at her with tear-filled eyes. Normally, I don't tolerate my aunt's nonsense, but this time, I was so shocked that I couldn't say a word. She continued, "Believe me, dear, I love you as much as I love Sharon." I yelled at her when she told me about Ron, but he came down to my house and politely confessed his deep love for Sharon. You know how humble and sweet he is. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I imagined Ron doing everything she described. She tried to hug me, but I blocked her. I wiped my tears and composed myself, saying I had something to attend to and asked her to leave. Before leaving, she added, "If you're thinking of contacting Ron, don't. He blocked you." I asked him to. "It's not good for my son-in-law to be in contact with his ex, you know." I told her, "You and your son-in-law. I have much more to do in life than chasing other people's men." She got up and said, "Don't get discouraged, my love. I understand it will be hard for you to find another man at your age and with your appearance, but don't worry. There are many divorced men looking for a second love in life. I'm sure you'll find such a good man." I yelled, "Get out." I deeply regretted losing my composure and giving her the satisfaction of seeing my vulnerability. But it's okay. We all have weak moments in life when we simply can't stay strong. This news was much more painful than the ghosting. I'm not saying it would have been easy if he had cheated with another woman, but it would have been better than this. Now who knows? My aunt can show up anytime to rub her daughter's prize in my face. Everyone among friends and family knew about Ron and me. Now I feel stupid for having such a pompous engagement. Now that he's marrying Sharon, the story is evident to everyone about what happened in the background. My aunt has been weaving lies. She told everyone that Ron found solace in Sharon because I was stubborn and self-centered, prioritizing my career over him. She even claimed that Ron suspected I was seeing someone in the UK. She said he heard a guy's voice in the background every time he called me. I've never been in touch with most of my relatives since I moved out of my house. Even as a teenager, I was distant from them because I didn't like their trivial conversations. Therefore, it was easier for my aunt to sell her lies. Feels so terrible. I know all this is ultimately for the better. I got rid of the cheater, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. But you know what? When you're in the middle of a dark phase, it's impossible to navigate through it, even though you know everything will be fine in a while. Update 1. Hello and thank you for cheering me up in my original post. I've been thinking about updating this for a long time. I thought I'd wait until the day I no longer feel anything for my ex. And here we are today. Indeed, things have gotten better, and there's a cherry on top. Wait for that. That phase was really dark and long. It's not that I haven't been through a breakup before, but this was horrible because he was my fiancé. My mom stayed with me for a week, and it helped to have her by my side. However, I felt sick the moment she left. I had been with Ron for so many years that every place brought back memories of him. Enough reason to leave the city. I applied for jobs in the UK and got a very promising one in Leeds. I packed my bags and left. If someone is struggling to move on after a difficult past, nothing heals better and faster than a change of scenery. Of course, only if your situation allows it. Moving to Leeds made me feel like I was reborn. I was surprised at how quickly I managed to get over it. It took a better turn a few days ago when my mom called and asked if Ron was unemployed. I said yes, well, technically not unemployed, but he left his job a year ago to pursue his passion for writing. Here's something interesting. Ron wanted to be a writer and wrote occasionally, but he wasn't making much progress with his full-time job, so I decided to help him build a career around writing. We had an agreement where I'd work full-time while he laid the groundwork to start a business. Eventually, I'd quit my job so we could both work on it together. But he screwed it all up. My mom laughed so hard when I told her these details. She said my aunt visited her the other day and screamed, "Why didn't you tell me Ron was a bum?" My mom was confused because, as far as she knew, Ron was working and doing quite well financially. My aunt told her that Ron insisted Sharon do an accelerated course to get a better-paying job so she could cover household expenses for both of them. He wanted to execute that plan with Sharon. What he didn't know was that my aunt married him to Sharon so they could both live off her income. Well, they played jokes on each other. The last I heard, Sharon was working part-time as a receptionist at a restaurant making table reservations. I'm not sure they can both live off a receptionist's income. It may sound disdainful to look down on Sharon's profession. Well, maybe. I don't care. I'd love to see the disappointment and anguish on my aunt's face when the truth about Ron comes to light. There's another layer to this. My aunt was the mistress of Sharon's dad, and when he died, his legal wife kicked them out of the house. That's why my aunt lived with my grandparents, living off their pension. Sometimes my dad and uncle helped them financially. Sharon has always been a foolish girl. She doesn't like to work, nor is she capable of it. She failed high school twice and finally dropped out. That receptionist job she got was also thanks to my uncle, who recommended her to a friend's restaurant. Now let's talk about poetic justice. After I finished lamenting my situation, it was time to act. Ron was still at his job when we got engaged, and together we bought a trust fund we were going to use later for our business. Since I handled all our finances, I had full access to that trust fund. Every month, I deposited 20% of my salary into it. 20% of the money in that trust fund was his. When I found out about his infidelity, I liquidated the entire trust fund. He has no idea it no longer exists. He's still delusional, thinking he'll get the money from there. According to my mom, Ron told Sharon that once my anger calmed down, he'd contact me and get his 50% of the trust fund. Delusional. If you think I'm a scammer, I'm not, because I spent an equivalent amount of money on Ron during his bad days. After Ron quit his full-time job, he struggled to get writing gigs. It was hard for him to make ends meet, so I gave him access to one of my spare bank accounts, where I had savings for his monthly expenses. I supported him in every way possible. What I did with the trust fund is fair. If we had been married, I would have received alimony. The trust fund was the closest thing to it because we were almost married. Now, I wonder about his future business plans. He has no savings, no trust fund, and no steady job. But guess what? That's no longer my problem. Update 2. This Christmas has been delightful. I had the satisfaction of seeing the disappointment on my ex's face. I went back to my mom's house and he came knocking on the door. He was here asking for the money from the trust fund, demanding 50% of it. I said, "What money?" He said, "The money I saved in the trust fund. The money we were going to use for our business." I replied, "Oh, that trust fund? I liquidated it." He went crazy. "How could you do that? We saved that money for our business. What are we going to do now?" I laughed and said, "Excuse me, there's no we here. You're my cousin's husband now. The person you should call we is across the street." He took a deep breath and said, "Look, I know I hurt you, and you have every right to be mad at me, but I need that money from the trust fund. I have no job. The client I was writing for dropped me. Sharon doesn't make enough for both of us. I haven't paid rent for 2 months, and if I'm late one more month, the landlord threatened to evict us. Please, understand my situation." I stared at him and said, "Why the hell should I understand your cheating ass? Remember what you did to me? I'm under no obligation to help you." He said, "Your money? You only own 20% of the trust fund." "Exactly," I said. "And I took your 20% to recover the money I spent on your sorry ass when you couldn't afford anything." He threatened to sue me, saying I stole his share. I told him that if he did, I'd press charges for card theft because he used my debit card to withdraw money for his monthly expenses. I reminded him that if we calculated who owed what, he'd end up in debt. So he better watch his tone and accept the truth. He left, angry, with a bitter face. Update 3. If this wasn't enough, my aunt and Sharon showed up at my parents' house. looking for me. They were here to ask about the trust fund money. Ron had told them I took his share, and now he was ruined. Sharon pestered me, saying, "Why is my future at stake? You're ruining our lives." I told her, "This concept is beyond your understanding. Stay out of it." My aunt yelled at me for talking to Sharon like that, saying I should lower my ego because Sharon is more successful than me since Ron left me for her. My dad came into the room after hearing the commotion. My aunt melted at the sight of him and claimed she was casually talking to me about her distress. Dad shut her down. "If you dare raise your voice at my daughter again, I'll cut off all financial help I've been giving you." He turned to Sharon and said, "If you're so successful, why can't you manage your own household? Ron is your husband now. You wanted him so badly. Now deal with it." Apparently, my aunt and Sharon didn't know about Ron's poor financial condition or their overdue rent. They were shocked. Sharon started sobbing, saying Ron had ruined her life because he couldn't support her. She begged me to release Ron's share of the trust fund to rebuild their lives. My dad laughed in their faces. "You seduced my daughter's fiancé and ruined her life. Now you want her to save you." Before they left, I said, "Don't worry about Sharon. There are plenty of sugar daddies waiting to shower love on girls like her. I'm sure you both can find one." Life has taken its course, and the fallout from all this drama has been nothing short of poetic justice. Here's what's happened since the last update. Ron finally landed a low-paying job in his previous field, but it's clear he's miserable. He still blames me for ruining his dreams of becoming a writer. Apparently, he tells anyone who will listen that a witch, me, destroyed his life. The truth is, Ron wasn't dedicated to his so-called dream. If he truly cared about writing, he would have found a way to make it work, like keeping a day job to support himself while pursuing his passion at night. But that's not my problem anymore. He made his choices, and now he has to live with them. The most satisfying part of all this is seeing my aunt and Sharon face the consequences of their actions. My grandparents, who owned the house they lived in, finally had enough of their antics and kicked them out. My aunt and Sharon are now renting a tiny apartment together, and it seems like they're barely scraping by. Sharon's job as a part-time receptionist isn't enough to sustain them both, and my aunt's pension isn't substantial either. They're stuck in a miserable situation of their own making. I can't help but laugh at the irony. My aunt schemed so hard to secure a better life for Sharon by stealing my fiancé. Now, they're both broke and struggling, with no one to blame but themselves. My dad has been amazing throughout all of this. He's continued to shut down any attempts by my aunt or Sharon to guilt or manipulate me. He's even cut off all financial help to them, saying they don't deserve a dime after what they did. Meanwhile, my mom and I have grown closer than ever. She's been my rock, and we've shared plenty of laughs about how karma has caught up with everyone involved. As for me, life has never been better. I'm still working in Leeds, and my career is thriving. I've even started dating someone. A wonderful, kind man who treats me with respect and love. It's early days, but I feel optimistic about the future. Moving to a new city was the best decision I ever made. It gave me a fresh start and the chance to heal. I've also learned so much about self-respect and boundaries. I'll never let anyone treat me the way Ron and my aunt did again. Sharon and Ron's relationship is in shambles. According to mutual acquaintances, they're constantly fighting, and the financial strain has taken its toll. Ron reportedly regrets leaving me and realizes now that Sharon isn't the ideal partner he thought she was. But it's too late for regrets. He made his bed, and now he has to lie in it, with Sharon no less. Sharon recently tried reaching out to me, asking for advice on how to deal with difficult times. She had the audacity to claim she misses having me in her life. I didn't even bother replying. She can stew in the mess she created. The past few years have been a roller coaster, but I've come out stronger and happier on the other side. Watching karma do its thing has been deeply satisfying. To anyone reading this who's dealing with betrayal or heartbreak, hold your head high. People who hurt you will eventually get what they deserve, and when they do, you'll realize you're better off without them. Thank you to everyone who supported me throughout this journey. Your kind words and encouragement meant the world to me. Here's to a brighter, drama-free future. Cheers.